Welcome back, everyone, to another Kaiserreich China Rework Progress Report. And this time we're going to take a look at the Liangguang clique, which has been released 9 days ago, but I can only tangle it now. Now, this is an interesting place, very, very interesting place, because if we take a look at the tree, we see that it's pretty big, and there's a lot of choices to be made, as you can see. So let's dig right in. So the Northern Expedition and the German intervention have left southern China in a sorry state. The Kmt led an irresponsible government that expropriated the province of Guangdong to fund their failed war against the Beijing government. While the AOG gained control of Guangzhou, the region's economic heart, through shady dealings with Sun Chuanfang, aka the leader of the League of Eight Provinces. Now, it would be nice if I had brought up a map of the whole thing, now would it? So yes, I should do that. No fancy graphics this time, because I do not have the time. But yes, let's see. Okay. I wish I could just open this like right over here. Okay, guess this is gonna have to do. So yeah, League of Eight Provinces starts off, and the Liangguang clique, which is the one that the province report is about, is in the south. Once the League of Eight Provinces explodes, which we saw in the League of Eight Provinces video, Liangguang is gonna revolt. And Liangguang just means two guangs, or two expanses. There's the Guangxi, the western expanse, and the Guangdong, the eastern expanse, also known as Canton. So if we take a look at the map, this is just really bad. I wish I could just... I wish I could just see the image, but it's apparently impossible. God damn it. Okay, maybe this is gonna work. Okay, much better. So yeah, essentially, these two are united, but the capital of the Canton area, Canton itself, has been essentially sold to the AOG by the former leader of the League of Eight Provinces. Journalist Hallett Abend described the city as a squeezed lemon, a city of apathy. So in the aftermath, Chen Jiongming has returned as a governor of Guangdong after he was essentially expelled by first the Nationalists because he revolted against them, while Lu Rongting, aka the governor of Guangxi, was restored. Both had been ousted by the Kmt before the Northern Expedition and were eager to return and clean up the mess left by the Nationalists. The two met in Hong Kong during their brief exile and began working together to oust the Kmt and maintain the province's autonomy towards the League of Eight Provinces and restored Qing Dynasty. Latter move despised by Chen, a noted Republican. So yeah, while at the start they are part of the Qing, Chen Jiongming, the guy on the left over here, is very, very much still kind of well, against the monarchy and wanting to introduce some kind of radical reform to society. And he's actually a character that is very, very complicated, so we're gonna have to kind of explain a few things. So yeah, Chen immediately resumed his work that was interrupted by the Nationalists, make Guangdong a model province for democratic and federalist ideals. Cuts in the province's military budget, only offset by his alliance with the Guangxi Clique. So essentially, the whole alliance between Guangxi and Guangdong is based on the fact that Guangxi have the soldiers, while Guangdong has the money. Which also leads to the alliance with the merchants of Canton, because they're needed, essentially, for the funds. So this alliance with Guangxi and the merchants, however, has made them highly influential in Governor Chen's government, forcing him to halt his more radical reform and threatening his rule. Nevertheless, thanks to his efforts, Guangdong is one of the few provinces of China with genuine democracy and financial stability. Lu Rongting, meanwhile, is closer to archetypal warlord. He has consolidated his rule over Guangxi by expanding and modernizing the provincial army. Despite little achievements on the provincial side of things, Lu remains popular in the province, maintaining very meritocratic and pluralist ideals, appealing to regionalist sentiments in a province with numerous ethnic minorities. Yes, because Guangxi is a very complicated place. In the end, his alliance with Guangdong is mutually beneficial. So when the league collapses, the two governors banded together into Liangguang, or two Guangs, and Chen Jiongming was named the governor-general of the two provinces. Together, the two governors hoped to ward off the warring cliques in Nanjing and the Kmt in Fujian to protect their independence. So they are once again uniting both the idea of regionalism and regional independence and the particular aspirations and ambitions of the personal warlord. So in this case, it would be either Chen or Lu. And that is shown essentially at the beginning. The focuses that you can take are divided into two as Liangguang. You have the Liangguang diarchy path or tree, which is the one that you take at the start and you're going to be busy with for most of the time. And then after a few events, you can take Fire in the Lake. So the Liangguang diarchy is essentially all about uniting Guangxi and Guangdong. So Guangdong is the economic engine, while Guangxi is the Sparta of the East, as it's called. And the paths are relatively straightforward, but I like that they do give you a few kind of branching choices that are supposed to represent some of what's going on. For example, you can smuggle opium in the great federalist democratic model province, which is just fantastic. So yeah, essentially, at the beginning, they're trying to secure their independence, but in a bit, things start to shake up. So if you take a look at the starting screen, we're going to take a look at some of the factions that are around. So you can see Chen Jiongming over here being the leader. And yeah, essentially he's the leader of the Public Interest Party, which we looked at the last time as well. Where the hell? Yeah, here we go. We looked at last time as well when we looked at Yunnan. But yes, so this is the party that Chen formed in real life as well, although of course here he is actually doing so as the leader of a province, which is, you know, slightly different. Then the market liberals, and they're social liberal, as you can see. Then the market liberals are the merchant corps. Now the merchant corps is an interesting little thing because it was a organization that was formed under the leadership of Chen Lianbo, who is the second person here in the leader list that we're going to take a look at in a bit, which was supposed to represent the interests of Canton's sort of bourgeoisie, in a way. Essentially, they got kind of riled up at the Chinese nationalists in our timeline and got destroyed, with actually communist support for the nationalist government. So yeah, lovely merchant corps. Nice reference, and you can lead Guangdong, or Liangguang would be better to say, as the merchants. So the Public Interest Party has this path that we're going to take a look at later, the Federalist Dominance. The merchant corps becomes the merchant government. Then we have Southern Gentry. That's not important. They cannot take power. The new Guanxi Clique and the Guanxi Clique. Now this may seem very confusing, but it's actually relatively normal. Now the Guanxi Clique that exists right now, that is paternal autocrat, represents what in real life is referred to as the old Guanxi Clique, led by Lu Rongting, as you can see, or Lu Rongting. if we can pronounce it correctly. So essentially, the difference between the new and the old Guanxi clique in real life was that the old one was led by this man over here, and he was already serving in the military in the Qing government and did not really have any like national political aspirations. However, the second Guanxi clique, the new Guanxi clique, let's see if we can find it. The new Guanxi clique was formed by Li Rongting, who only rose to prominence in the military after the Shanghai 1911 Republican Revolution. So this was a more ideologically nationalist and generally politically involved faction. And Li Rongting would end up joining the KMT, the Nationalist Party, and becoming essentially the second most important man in the Nationalist Party in the 40s. And, well, briefly also the leader of China. But yeah, essentially, they can exist too. If we take a look at it over here, the old Guanxi clique eventually is represented by this guy, Ma Ji, after Lu Rongting is going to die. And Li Rongting, as you can see, is also here. If we take a look at the tree, we see that the old Guanxi clique is on the left-hand side, the Guanxi Clique Dominance. Because if you go down that path, you're gonna have essentially a switch in the diarchy's balance of power. At the beginning, it's Guangdong that dominates. If somehow you decide to go down that path, you're gonna have the Guangxi clique dominating with its, with the more Spartan and military characteristics. Whereas the new Guangxi clique can take over and lead the province towards the Nationalist Party, but towards the right wing of the Nationalist Party, and to a path that actually resembles quite a bit the real-life Chiang Kai-shek regime. Then you have one less path that we're gonna see later. So the first event that you do have, and I'm gonna have all of these links obviously in the description so that you can expand your readings on these subjects. So the first event that happens that gives you some some tension happening is the Guangzhou Revolutionary Uprising. Now, Guangzhou Canton as a city has quite the history of uprisings, and in fact one of them that is sort of referenced in the Federalist report only happens in real life, doesn't happen in Kaiserreich, but we're seeing sort of similar dynamics happening. So essentially, if we take a look at down here, so the people of Guangzhou are certainly unhappy about the AOG to say the least. The city is controlled right now by the Germans in 1936, and the sale of the Zhegan Railway, which is an event that happens to the League of Eight Provinces, causes things to go awry in the city. Starting as riots, Chen will have an opportunity to arm and support the revolutionaries, which he hopes to accomplish through the Merchant Corps. A bit of a nod as to, in real life, when Chen revolted against the Nationalists, the Merchant Corps did help him. So that's a nod to that, and also a nod to the fact that Chen is kind of supportive sometimes of more radical elements. Aka the Canton Revolutionaries. The merchants, however, are wary. It is clear that China's syndicalists are already organizing the riots into something greater, and they fear a revolution going out of control and disrupting their precious finances. And here we are referring to the Canton Commune or Canton Soviet, whatever you want to call this, which was a failed rebellion in 1927 that was essentially an attempt to set up a Council Republic or Soviet Republic in Canton that led to some one of the heaviest Chinese Communist Party losses essentially in its history, but it was performed in Canton because it is just, Canton is just in general one of the cities that is more well connected to the world and more modern. So it's kind of a Paris of China in some ways during this period. So yeah, bit of a revolutionary hotbed. So that's a nice reference. And another reference is the Zhogan Railway sale causing an uprising. In China, railway protection was a big thing, aka protection of national railway assets against foreign seizure or foreign meddling. So railways were seen kind of as this symbol of progress that China would have to develop on its own, in a kind of self-strengthening to join the ranks of the civilized nations. And so obviously, because like one of the big things that caused the Qing, or like one of the big sparks that caused uprisings against the Qing to erupt, was that Qing, as it says in the Wikipedia article over here, the Qing essentially turned to foreign backers, foreign loans to construct railways. While more radical people, more radical revolutionaries, nationalists, kind of just weren't opposed to this, because it was like, why would you build a railway if the railway is going to be controlled by the foreigners? The railway should be a national asset rather than just an economic one. So it was, in a way, one of the first ways in which the nationalist doctrine, one of the first symbols for nationalist doctrine in China during the beginning of the 20th century. So yeah, it's kind of important as well. That's nice. A couple of nice historical references with the Guangzhou Uprising. But essentially, the end of the diarchy is the big crisis that determines what you're going to be doing as the two expanses, as Liangguang. So in mid-1937, the aging Lu Rongting will pass away, leaving Ma Ji, the middleman over here, as the head of the Guanxi Clique. Ma Ji is Lu's adopted son, and he has ambitions for his province to reassert itself and break Guangdong's financial control. However, events outside his control will immediately put his plans to hold. So Li Zongren, one of the KMT's most able generals, will invade Guangxi from Yunnan. Now, a refresher in case you have not watched my Yunnan video or have not read the Yunnan progress report. So Yunnan is the province that borders Guangxi to the northwest. You can see it in the red color over here. And it is the place that is harboring all the remnant nationalist armies, so the Nationalist Party's military. And Li Zongren is a member of that military. And if instability happens in Guangxi, aka the old warlord dies, then Li Zongren is going to try to get in there and claim the province for himself and the party. So you get this event that essentially initiates an event chain that determines what happens in this sort of border skirmish that is not represented on the map. It's only for events. And as a result of that, you either have Ma Ji remaining in control, which leads to him consolidating his position and inviting his allies to the father's funeral, which is a trap, and then he tries to revolt and sort of claim hegemony over both of the Guangs, both of the expanses, both of the provinces, which if I can fetch, yeah, here we go. This is what's going to happen. So you have a Guanxi Clique, in this case controlled by the old Guanxi Clique, aka just, the standard warlord, Ma Ji. And if he takes over, then you have the old Guanxi Clique dominance tree. So you're going to form back into Liangguang if you play as Guanxi. Yeah, essentially that's what happens. If Li Zongren ousts the old clique, aka if Ma Ji dies or, I don't know, is somehow defeated, then you have a chance of either playing as Li Zongren against Chen or the merchants, And then you can go down the, where is it, New Guangxi takeover path, or you can have Chen Mingshu, aka another KMT guy, succeed. So this is all dependent on whether or not Chen Jiongming, the leader of Liangguang, is killed in the assassination attempt, which is going to depend on different factional influences, which is going to take, because like the way that they're building Liangguang is a bit like Fengtian in the current build of Kaiserreich, so there's different parties represent different factions within the government, and different actions, both through events, decisions, and focus tree choices, will affect different party popularities, which affects different faction influences, which determines available choices. And if certain factions are in control, then Chen will survive. If certain factions are not strong, then Chen will be killed. And then you get to select a successor. So whether he survives this attempt or not will depend on the influence of the Guanxi Clique, the merchants, and the gentry. They will determine if the men accompanying him are trustworthy or not. If Chen dies, then the Guangdong Provincial Assembly will quickly select between Chen Lianguang, head of the Merchant Corps, or Chen Mingshu of the Nationalists, to succeed him and lead the province against the power-hungry warlord of Guangxi, whether he is Ma Ji or Li Congren. So otherwise, Chen Jiongming will just rally Guangdong against Ma Ji. So if he survives, and you rally the... So this is only, by the way, if you have Ma Ji. If Li Congren and ousted will click, then the war will begin immediately. Yeah, essentially, so that just, outright makes the war inevitable. And you can play as Li Congren and win, or you can kill Li Congren as one of these other people. Chen Jiongming, Chen Lianguang, or Chen Mingshu. But most likely Chen Jiongming, because most likely the event for Chen Jiongming to die has not happened. But they say that there is the rare case where Li Congren is in charge of Guangxi and Chen Mingshu in Guangdong. So apparently there's a way to do that. And if that is the case, then there will be a peaceful resolution to the conflict, with one of them being chosen to lead the new KMT aligned government. Because the result of all this confusing talk that I just did is that these two guys on the right are, while they do have disagreements, they're both part of the Nationalist Party. And they both want a Republican China. Chen Jiongming also wants a Republican China, but he's part of the China Public Interest Party, or he's the leader of the China Public Interest Party. While the two guys in the middle, Chen Lianguang is essentially a business person guy, and he doesn't have national political ambitions. Ma Ji also does not have national political ambitions. He's just a regional warlord guy. So yeah, essentially, that's very, very clearly the profile of these people. Anyway, with the crisis out of the way, depending on whatever resolution you've picked, Liangguang will have determined its path for the mid-game and then truly begin interacting with other tags in the region. Depending on the victor of the power struggle, there are many different paths you can choose. So, first one is the Federalist, but we will not be going through that order because in the focus tree that they've given us, there's a different order, so we're going to go left to right. So first is the Guangxi Clique Dominance. Now this is the old Guangxi Clique over here, and also the least interesting one. The merchant government is the Merchant Corps. Now, so the Guangxi warlord is closer to what you'd expect from a warlord. He wants to consolidate his province's power in the region and be at the top of it. While he has no intentions of unifying China, he does have access to the National Protection Path. Now, what is the National Protection Path? National Protection is a reference to this, the National Protection War against the monarchy of failed Emperor Yuan Shikai. And National Protection kind of became one of those buzzwords in a way. It kind of became a 1910 version of a Chinese buzzword. and just you have armies named after national protection. You have people saying that they're for national protection this, national protection that, a bit like how later on you have constitutional protection, army loving armies, or like, I don't know, army protecting armies. So it kind of starts a trend of just, you know, putting adjectives before everything. Yeah, pretty much that's the start of it. And National Protection Alliance kind of makes an alliance of certain anti-monarchy, but not exactly, like, you know, radical factions, which can then launch a new northern expedition and a new China. Alternatively, the southern warlord can simply try to expand his own personal domain, so a lot less ambitious. Should he be under threat from the other southern warlord, however, Maji can align himself with Wu Peifu should he still be in power in the north. So Wu Peifu is the leader of the effective leader of the Qing and the Zhili clique in the north. So he's effectively the leader of China right now. So he can join the Qing and attack into China. Then you have Chen Yin, the merchant government. While not a warlord per se, his path is fairly similar to Maji's. Expand Guangdong's influence in the region and potentially join the National Protection Alliance. He simply wants to protect the influence and power of Chinese businessmen, protect trade, and destroy all traces of syndicalism. If threatened, Chen can align... I know there's another Chen. It's confusing. Can align with either northern governments or even Japan under the right circumstances. So yeah, that's pretty great. That is pretty great. So that's the merchant government, the second one. Federalist Dominance is probably one of the most interesting paths that the province can take. Because this is really, really unique, you know? It's a relatively obscure thing in Chinese history. It's not often talked about. Now, Chen Jiongming was an interesting character, and different, like, historians and people who have studied, you know, Chinese political doctrines through time give different interpretations. You have some people that describe this guy as kind of a radical revolutionary, even more radical and idealistic than Sun Yat-sen or Sun Jianshan or whatever you want to call the guy, because of his sort of refusal to use force to unite the country. But at the same time, this guy also kind of tried to fight Sun Yat-sen, so he wasn't really that pacifistic when it comes to fighting against Sun Yat-sen, who was threatening his own power base in Guangdong province. So because of that, and because of the timing of when in real life he actually ended up like having his uprisings and his battles against Sun Yat-sen, he is labeled by many as kind of just a relatively less barbaric and reactionary warlord with, you know, a developed ideology, but still a warlord. And that's the official position of the nationalists and the communists, for understandable reasons, I would say. And this position is actually expounded. I've got a few notes that I'm going to publish from like a couple of books. This is actually the position that is taken by the Cambridge History of China, which is, you know, kind of authoritative. And they've got, you know, they've got their sources. So yeah, it is very, very much possible. Other people, such as one of the biographers, someone who wrote one of the biographies of Chen, Leslie Chen, kind of give the impression that he's more of an idealistic revolutionary. But, like, I myself, not being an expert, I'm just a guy who's read more than the usual person on this stuff, is that while he did have his ideals, he was still a warlord, still represented the interests of certain sections of society that simply could not allow a more centralized government in China. and a more radical revolutionary line coming from Canton. So more regional interests, obviously personal interests, and so, you know, idealizing the guy I don't think really makes all that much sense, but he's a very, very interesting person because he did really seem to have some genuine beliefs about him. So he's not, you know, not like Tang Yao, the warlord of Yunnan, where you have that he's espousing an ideology, but so yeah, he definitely seems to have wanted, you know, what he was preaching, kind of walked the walk as well as talked the talk. So yeah, that's kind of the historical discussion on Chen, very, very quickly summarized. You'd have to read in Chinese really to get like the entire picture, and I just don't have the skill nor the time to do that. So yeah, I just kind of read what was available in English and got this impression about the guy. That's generally the dichotomy that historians seem to be grappling with. So anyway, in the Kaiserreich, he is actually represented as just generally a Democrat. Perhaps more importantly, however, Chen Jiongming is a staunch Republican, one of the very few sincere believers in federalism. Now, in real life, this could have just meant a convenient way to frame a, like, not necessarily anti-warlord ideology. At the same time, he developed his ideology quite well in terms of like publishing manifestos and stuff like that, where he outlined his ideal system for China and even kind of wished that China would lead the way to join a larger international federation, where you have different levels of federative decision-making process and organization, almost a bit like a syndicalist system. But at the same time, again, these are the two interpretations. So if you take in-game the Federalist Dominance path, you have two options. Either a necessary evil, which essentially turns him into, you know, Nationalist Party 2.0, trying to unify the country through military force from Guangdong, or initiate the United Provinces. The United Provinces is going to create the United Provinces of China and the South, which invites a certain, a few other warlords. You can see here he's taken over Yunnan and fucking, what's that called? Henan province, or sorry, not Henan, Hunan province, and a few others, a few other pieces of territory, bits of Sichuan as well, which is just, based. So he does this not through war, but through diplomacy. And then after that's done, you have a sort of, you have the problem of doing this, right? So this is a coalition of warlords, the United Provinces. So you start trying to unite that more to, have enough power to compete with the northern government and, unify the country. And so that obviously has to lead to military nationalization, aka bringing the entirety of the military of this coalition under central government control, which can lead, they say, to problems with, for example, Tang Jiao. We're gonna see exactly what they mean with this. Will there be more civil wars? What conditions will be put for that to be a possibility? We do not know, but this is definitely a reference to the Central Plains War, which is a real-life event, 1929 and 1930. Now, the Central Plains War was essentially all the warlords that had supported Chiang Kai-shek in the northern expedition. So you have Yan Xishan of Shanxi, Feng Yuxiang of the National People's Army, or whatever it's called, Kuomintang, and Li Congren of the new Guanxi Clique, being told in a few disarmament conferences, because at that moment China was like extremely mobilized. It had like multiple million men under arms with an extremely weak economy, so it was not able to afford this. Essentially, these warlords were told, okay, you've helped us secure power. we do not control you yet. You're still, governors of your provinces or whatever, but we should disarm, which everyone agreed was necessary, but no one really wanted to be the first guy to disarm, because then that would leave him to be vulnerable. And that leads to kind of the whole Chiang Kai-shek has just another warlord kind of I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but essentially it leads to the realization that Chiang Kai-shek, the way he operated on a practical basis, his regime was just very, very close to a warlord just with a party, because he also didn't want to kind of lead by example and start disarming first. He wanted the other people to disarm first, so obviously they didn't trust them, because he had just deposed Sun Chuanfang and other warlords. And so the power struggle between Chiang Kai-shek and these warlords ended up escalating. A coalition formed. Only a few warlords supported Chiang Kai-shek, such as the Ma's of Gansu and stuff like that, and importantly Jiang Xueliang of Manchuria. And in the end, the Nationalists won. But the sort of, you could say, the chance to unify China, for real before the Japanese invasion was kind of lost, essentially because of that. Because it's not like the Nationalists just won by a landslide. This was a massive war with millions of soldiers, and it kind of represents the way that the warlord politics did work. Even the ones that were more enlightened and followed ideology and were more sophisticated, they were prone to warlord thinking. So yeah, they didn't really look out for the nation as a whole. They first off looked after their own survival. So this is represented in the Federalist path, but we have no idea exactly how. So after that, you negotiate for reunification with the North. In the end, when the South is secured, Chen will proceed to negotiate with the Beijing and Fengtian government for reunification, but this is very, very unlikely to happen. In the end, war is likely between the UPC and other national governments, be it Qing, which Chen will never directly negotiate with, so that's nice, the Zhili or Fengtian cliques, which will lead to the, hopefully, final reunification of China. So after that, you can declare a new China. New Chinese Federal Republic, which would be based AF, and I hope we'll have a very, very awesome federalist foreign policy tree. The other options are the KMT takeovers. So there's Chen Mingshu and Li Zongren. Either through Li Zongren's invasion or from succeeding Chen Jiongming, the KMT can return to power in the two Guangs. Both will attempt to create a government based on Sun Yat-sen's Sanmin doctrine, or free principles of the people. Although they will each focus on one principle over the two. Now, this leads into a few interesting things to talk about. Now, what the fuck are the free principles of the people? Now, the free principles of the people might have already talked about this a million times, but in case you do not know, it's relatively important, so let's take a look at that. This is the philosophy of Sun Yat-sen, and it's essentially the Sun Yat-sen doctrine of Chinese nationalism, which ends up heavily influencing both Nationalist Party and Communist Party ideology as a whole, to different levels and with different interpretations, because these are kind of propaganda terms. They're not really well developed, point for point programs. They're more just, they're kind of liberté, égalité, fraternité, or whatever. They're slogans. And the three of them are Minsu, Minquan, and Minsheng. Minsu just means the nation, sort of, the people-ish. And these terms are really hard to translate, so it makes it quite a bit different. quite a bit more difficult. Okay, Minchuan is the easiest to translate. It's just the people's power, the people's government, or democracy. So Minsu just means the people as an ethnic identity in a way, and so it's referred to often as nationalism. Minsheng, it's the most controversial, the third one. This is the people's livelihood, and sometimes referred to as socialism, sometimes referred to it as social welfare. So yeah, that's the principle that really takes Sun Yat-sen to become a radical democratic or social democratic figure. So essentially, Minsu is the idea of self-determination, really, and the unity of the Chinese ethnicities. Essentially, it's the idea that China must become independent of foreign powers, all that kind of stuff. So it's nationalism. Nationalism in its mildest form, really. Not really a, like, National Socialist type nationalism, but a independence, revolutionary type nationalism. So think more along the lines of Hungarian Revolution or Italian Wars of Unification or French Revolution nationalism. Minchuan, the people's power or people's government, is just, the establishment of democracy in China with Chinese characteristics, essentially. Later on in his life, Sun became a little bit more, you could say, disillusioned with Western democracy. So he developed the concept a little bit, and also kind of changed around the way separation of powers works, adding in the control yuan and the examination yuan. This is not supposed to be playing, so go away. No more music, even though I'm almost done, so yeah, it's kind of fine, I guess. Ending in the control yuan, which was essentially like the watchdog in a way, making sure that everything else worked the way it was supposed to without corruption. And the examination yuan, which is the continuation of the Chinese tradition of sort of meritocratic or fully meritocratic, depending on the time and your definition, examinations to select civil servants and officials. So yeah. And the legislative yuan and executive yuan and the judicial yuan have their sort of areas of responsibility shifted around a little bit, but yeah, that's basically just the way democracy, you think, works, just with some changes. Minsheng is essentially part Georgism, which is a way to organize taxes and land reform that is really difficult to explain, and I myself have never really understood, so I'm not gonna try to explain it. But essentially, the idea of Sun Yat-sen is to concentrate capital in the hands of the state and avoid excessive individual accumulation, and at the same time ensuring that people generally have enough to lead a healthy lifestyle. So essentially, it's a welfare state with heavy state, you could say, intervention in the economy, mostly in the agriculture, but also in other sectors such as the national defense industry, and it is heavily influential among later developments of the Chinese Communist Party's ideology. You could say that a lot of what they do today has its roots in Minsheng. Now, this is what I say, so do not take this as some historian saying it. But if you take a look at what, for example, Deng Xiaoping, one of the most important leaders in China of the modern age, proposed, and the way that the reforms on opening have changed China, and the way that they have developed as a doctrine, you can see a lot of influences from this. So yeah, essentially that's that. However, everyone interprets these the way that they would want. So for example, in the 1930s and 40s, you have people interpreting Minsu in like more radically nationalist ways. Among them, Chiang Kai-shek, and among them like the blue shirts or whatever, which were the kind of Chinese version of fascism. Chiang Kai-shek also kind of was a Chinese version of fascism. You have people interpreting Minchuan in different ways. And obviously Minshang is heavily controversial because then it gets involved in the discussion of, did Sun Yat-sen want to establish socialism? Kinda. He was like ideologically very, very close to Russian populism in a way, especially in his later years. So something along the lines of the left socialist revolutionaries, if you know your Russian politics. So yeah, it's a lot, kind of a hornet's nest of ideological explanations. And in the tree, the way this is represented is that different KMT factions will focus on different KMT principles, will emphasize them in different ways. So Li Zongren and the KMT right will focus on the Minsu principle, the nationalism, whereas the Chen Mingshu's Social Democrats will focus on Minchuan, the people's power, the establishment of democracy. And it's basically heavily implied that Wang Jingwei, who is the leader of the KMT insurgency, which is not like the same thing as the KMT that is rising in Liangguang, but can unite with it, he is represented as a radical socialist, and he is emphasizing the Minshang, or the livelihood principle. So yeah, you have Li Zongren, where is it? So Li Zongren opposes the leftists in general, may try to usurp power from the Central Committee, which is in Fujian, continuing the insurgency, and they spawn as the KMT on the map, and form his own that favors the long-ignored and forgotten right wing of the KMT. So he's KMT right wing, a bit like a few factions in Yunnan, and that's the other way to get the KMT right to win. So his tree, if we can find it, has the Free Stage Revolution concept in it. Now, the Free Stage Revolution, I haven't found a Wikipedia article on it, which is weird, but I did find a speech by Sun Yat-sen from it, so primary source, pretty good, where he explains his concept. So it's pretty standard, except it's spelled out. Pretty standard revolutionary practice. So the first stage of the revolution in Sun Yat-sen's conception is military rule, right? So you have the revolutionary army overthrowing the dynasty, overthrowing feudalism, overthrowing foreign exploitation, overthrowing opium, all that kind of stuff. So for force. The second stage is the transitional period. It is a one-party state where you have political tutelage by the Nationalist Party. So the first one was military rule, not party rule. Now, it's important to note that later on these two combine because the nationalist military becomes what we would today refer to as a party military under the guidance of the Kuomintang, the Soviet assistance to the nationalists. And that legacy continues today on the Chinese mainland because the Chinese People's Liberation Army is also a party military. It is the armed wing not of the People's Republic of China, but of the Chinese Communist Party. So, yes, kind of... So, like, for example, if the Chinese Communist Party lost control of mainland China, they'd... like, the People's Liberation Army would be abolished. So yeah, the second one is party rule, one-party state, which sort of nurtures and grows democracy, because at that moment it is sort of not expected by Sun Yat-sen that the people are ready for true democracy. And the third phase is the establishment of constitutional rule and multi-party state. So yeah, that is the way to transition for Sun Yat-sen from feudalist monarchy, essentially, and warlord rule into democracy capital. Well, he wouldn't have used capitalism, but effectively capitalism. So yeah, that's what Li Tongren emphasizes, because he wants to emphasize military rule and the rule of the party, which is very, very much what Chiang Kai-shek did in real life. Chiang Kai-shek would proclaim that military rule was over and that his government would advance to the second stage of the revolution, the political tutelage and the one-party state, which is the Dangguo focus you see there. Let's check it out. So Dangguo just means the party state, the one-party state. And yeah, that's the second stage of the revolution, which was inspired, as you can see, by the Communist Party, the Russian Revolution, and Leninist political theory. However, because of what I said with Chiang Kai-shek was more interested on the military aspects. He was a general and military man by degree, by career, and he operated a lot like a warlord. So you have a lot of arguments to say that Chiang Kai-shek's regime never really went out of the first stage, the military rule. Most likely you have a similar situation here with Li Tongren, but he tries to contest leftist rule and make the KMT right, leading the KMT force, and reunite China that way. Chen Ming-shu, on the other hand, yet another Chen, you're trying to support Song Qingling's faction of the KMT. Now, Song Qingling is Madame Sun. Let's see if we can find Sun Yat-sen and get Madame Sun over here. Where the hell are you? Yes, Song Qingling. And she is a very, very important political figure in Chinese history as well, just like her husband. And she is trying to bridge the gap between the two factions of the KMT, but she's more leaning towards the left of the KMT. She's more leaning towards the left of the KMT, and Chen Ming-shu is her supporter in Liangguang, so he is likely to reunite with, if I can bloody find it, he is more likely to reunite with the KMT government or the KMT Central Committee in Fujian conducting the insurgency, but he can also apparently contest leftist rule. So most likely, if you reunite China with Chen and you ally yourself, you can like tag into the KMT, and then presumably continue either playing as a social democracy or trying to elect a radical socialist or something like that. Possibly, you have your normal elections as the KMT. So that's basically Liangguang. If you take a look at the full tree again for one last time, check it out. Again, as always, this is probably going to be really fun to play. Yet another tree that looks really, really awesome to play with. And it's actually got a large amount of different paths and different things you can do. So yeah, definitely looking forward to try it out. I do want to thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. All the links will be in the description, all the sources, of which there aren't as many as the last video because, I don't know, this guy is not talked about that much in English. And in general, when Chinese histories of the period mention the South, it is mostly in the context of, obviously, the Nationalists. So the fact that you have the alternate timeline over here really does hinder our ability to understand this stuff as much, because in real life, a lot of what is happening has to deal with the nationalist leadership. So being that the nationalists aren't as important here is kind of annoying. But yes, I will try to link as much stuff as possible. So I do want to thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you soon, and have a good day.